What does a true Canadian 60s memory smell like? It smells like the distinctive scent of a Coleman lantern mixed with the maple syrup on a wagon wheel. The 1960s were a pivotal decade, but the real shift happened in the kitchen, the car, and on the radio. If you remember dialing a clicky TV set or the heft of a silver dollar, you were part of this quiet revolution. Get ready to look back. Here are 15 everyday things Canadians did that have now vanished into history. Television viewing in the 1960s Canada was a distinct, hands-on chore, entirely unlike modern instant streaming. The ritual began with the necessity of patience. After flipping the power switch on the bulky set, you had to wait for the internal vacuum tubes to warm up, sometimes for a minute or more, before any image would appear. Acquiring a watchable picture was a cooperative, often frustrating domestic experiment. One person was tasked with meticulous adjustments to the clicky VHF/UHF dial, while another was in charge of manipulating the ubiquitous rabbit ears antenna. This antenna often required being physically held, tilted, or even wrapped in foil, with family members shouting instructions like, "Hold it right there!" "No, back a hair," to secure the fleeting sweet spot of the signal, usually resulting in a snowy, unstable image. The scarcity of available channels, typically only CBC and CTV, meant the entire family shared the single set, transforming every show into a deliberate, communal, and often negotiated event in the Canadian home. If you were listening to the radio in the 1960s Canada, the distinctive four-note musical chime was an automatic and ubiquitous sound marker. Known formally as the CBC Chimes, or sometimes the national anthem of the airwaves, this specific formal melody served as the auditory signature of Canadian public life. It reliably marked the top of every hour on the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, providing listeners with a brief, formal moment to pause and prepare for important information. More than just a time signal, the CBC chimes were a powerful, reliable anchor that officially segmented the country's programming schedule and preceded all major national news broadcasts. This unifying sound symbolized the consistent and reliable presence of the public broadcaster across the vast Canadian landscape. The brief, familiar melody created a shared national experience, instantly connecting listeners from coast to coast with the heartbeat of Canadian radio. The Eaton's Catalogue was a massive, thick publication that served as the definitive source of commercial fantasy and a nationwide retail reference in the 1960s Canada, long before the Internet existed. Its semi-annual cycle effectively marked the seasons. The arrival of the heavy spring-summer edition signaled a change in fashion and gardening, while the much-anticipated Christmas edition, famously dubbed the Wish Book, was the central tool for children meticulously circling their dream toys for Santa. This reliance on the physical catalog was a shared national experience that connected rural and urban Canadians to the same trends and consumer dreams. More than just a shopping guide, the Eaton's Catalogue was a cultural lifeline. For families outside of major cities, it was the window to the world of fashion, furniture, and gadgets, allowing them to compare prices and plan purchases. Its widespread distribution provided a crucial cultural link, ensuring that consumer dreams and material knowledge were standardized from coast to coast. The act of gathering around the catalog, marking pages, and debating future purchases was a significant family ritual that cemented its place as an iconic piece of Canadian social history. Before the introduction of the lightweight loonie in 1987, the silver dollar was an actual piece of large, heavy currency made of or near silver, marking it as serious money. Receiving one was an exciting and significant event, as this substantial coin was rarely used for everyday transactions. Instead, it was typically reserved for special occasions like birthdays, or immediately added to a growing collection, representing a tangible financial keepsake. The sheer substantial size and weight of the silver dollar communicated a sense of value and tradition that contrasts sharply with the lightweight modern coins used today. Its presence in your pocket or piggy bank carried a distinct sense of importance. The coin served as a memorable symbol of a different era in Canadian currency and exchange, one where the physical nature of the money itself reflected the value it represented. Canadian Tire money transcended its function as a mere discount coupon. For a generation of kids, it was akin to a secret, second national currency. These distinctive paper notes, typically earned by a parent after a fill-up at a Canadian Tire gas bar, featured the face of the mascot, Sandy McTire. They came in small denominations which were meticulously folded, collected, and stashed away for future use. The act of accumulating enough of this crinkly, colorful paper to finally afford a coveted item, be it a new toy, a hockey stick, or a bike part, was a crucial rite of passage. The sheer persistence and patience required to save up the small change for an expensive item provided an early, tangible lesson in saving and personal finance. This system was a uniquely Canadian tradition that cleverly fostered strong commercial loyalty and gave kids a profound feeling of genuine earned wealth. In the 1960s Canada, you simply never threw away a heavy, empty glass bottle from popular soda brands like Crush, Coke, or 7-Up. This wasn't because of widespread environmentalism, but because every bottle carried a tangible deposit value, making it a minor form of currency within the community. Empty bottles were a valuable commodity that needed to be carefully gathered, often rinsed, and then transported in milk crates or mesh bags back to the local corner store or grocery store. This system, which mandated the handling and return of heavy glass packaging, was an integral, practical part of local commerce and a distinct element of daily life. Once returned to the store, you'd receive a small but crucial deposit refund, typically a few pennies per bottle paid out right on the spot. This simple, systematic process taught Canadian kids a very early and practical lesson in resourcefulness and recycling long before those concepts were mainstream. Crucially, that refund provided instant pocket money, immediately funding the next purchase of bubblegum or a handful of penny candy. The act of collecting and redeeming bottles thus turned a simple environmental duty into a delicious source of 1960s financial independence, making every empty bottle a treasure hunt. The local corner store was a cherished institution where the transaction was personal, never rushed, and offered a pure taste of 1960s independence. With just a few hard-earned pennies and nickels in hand, a kid could approach the counter and carefully deliberate over the array of inexpensive sweets on display, ready to negotiate their sugary haul. The ultimate reward was walking out with a bulging bag of cheap sweets, licorice laces, chewy bubble gum, fuzzy peaches, or Smarties. The freedom of meticulously spending your own small change on a bag of pure sugar was a foundational memory of childhood autonomy. This simple, delicious ritual, overseen by an owner who often knew your name, made the corner store the epicenter of local childhood commerce and community trust. Family road trips in the 1960s offered a unique, unsupervised zone of freedom in the way-back seat of the station wagon. In an era of far fewer car safety regulations, this rear-facing space, often entirely without seatbelts, became the designated area for kids and overflow luggage, turning a long drive into an adventure. The chief activity for the occupants was engaging in a thrilling, slightly mischievous interaction with the public, making faces and hand gestures at the drivers and passengers in the cars following on the highway. This unsupervised territory was more than just a place to sit. It represented a temporary, playful escape from parental scrutiny and cemented its place as a quintessential nostalgic symbol of childhood road trips and the simpler, less safety-conscious motoring culture of the time. The Hudson's Bay Point blanket was far more than just bedding. It was an heirloom and a symbol of Canadian history found in countless homes. You knew the specific, comforting weight of the heavy, dense wool and the fabric's distinct, enduring scratchiness, which was a testament to its legendary durability and quality. Its heritage is profoundly linked to the historic fur trade, where the distinctive small dark lines, or points, woven into the edge were not decoration, but a practical code. These points indicated the blanket's original value in beaver pelts, the currency of the time. This connection meant that owning one linked everyday Canadian life directly to the nation's deep, rugged past, making it an essential layer for cold winters and a cherished, enduring piece of cultural identity. Saturday night was a sacred Canadian ritual centered entirely on Hockey Night in Canada. The voice of this national event belonged to Foster Hewitt, whose distinct, energetic delivery was instantly recognized across the country as the voice of the game. He skillfully conveyed the atmosphere and action despite often fuzzy black and white television screens and limited camera technology. His iconic calls, punctuated by the crowd's roar and the crack of the puck, brought the game to life for millions of Canadians. The weekly broadcast, frequently highlighting the intense rivalry between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens, transcended sports. This powerful cultural event anchored Canadian life and was instrumental in forging the national identity around a shared passion for hockey, making it a pivotal, unifying experience. The Canadian childhood was fundamentally tied to the wilderness and the outdoors. Family trips to the cottage, the lake, or the campsite were defined by two specific, essential sensory details that immediately signaled an escape from the city: the chemical aroma of potent insect repellent and the bright, hot smell of the Coleman lantern. The lantern's distinctive hiss and powerful, brilliant white light were mandatory for any evening activity deep in the woods. This signature light and sound combination clearly marked the boundary between civilization and the wild. These two omnipresent smells, the pungent bug spray and the reliable hot glow of the lantern, are iconic elements of Canadian outdoor nostalgia, symbolizing the adventure and necessary preparations for embracing the country's vast natural environment. In the 1960s, milk delivery was a deeply routine and integral part of weekly household life, representing an era of trusted, localized service. The process involved the familiar figure of the milkman, who would deliver fresh milk to your home several times a week. This was done not by leaving bottles exposed, but by placing the filled glass bottles into a specific insulated metal milk box, usually fixed right outside the front door or on the porch. This system ensured the milk remained fresh, provided an essential and reliable service, and removed the need for daily or even frequent grocery store visits just to replenish the milk supply, freeing up time for busy families. The sturdy metal milk box itself became a familiar fixture in suburban and small-town homes across Canada, a silent symbol of domestic convenience and neighborhood trust. This practice represented an entire era of routine, personalized services like bread and ice delivery that relied on a close, reciprocal relationship between local businesses and customers. Today, this localized bottle-based system has been almost entirely replaced by large-scale retail and supermarket culture, making the memory of that recurring clink of glass bottles in the metal box a distinct piece of vanished Canadian nostalgia. Early Canadian children's programming had a distinct charm born from its low-budget aesthetic and earnest simplicity, setting it apart from slicker American cartoons. Shows like Rocket Robin Hood and The Mighty Hercules were characterized by a noticeably choppy, sometimes unsettling animation style that quickly became a visual signature for a generation. This lack of high-quality, fluid production didn't hinder their cultural significance. Instead, it made them feel authentically homegrown and personal. The memorable elements, from the deep voice of Robin Hood to the cheap-looking futuristic characters, became instant cultural touchstones. This unique style powerfully proved that a deep sense of shared Canadian identity could be built through heartfelt local creativity, despite limited production budgets. The owner of the corner store in the 1960s was far more than just a cashier. They were a quiet, central authority figure in the community. Positioned behind the high counter, they often knew every kid's name, their parents, and sometimes even their weekly routines. The relationship was steeped in local community trust. On occasion, the owner would even extend a small line of credit to a familiar child, accepting an unpaid purchase with the understanding that your mother came in tomorrow to settle the debt. This level of personal, unhurried service and implied guardianship made the corner store a trusting social hub, irreplaceable in modern anonymous retail memory. Before the late 1960s, the visual landscape of consumer goods in Canada was distinctly unilingual. Depending on the region, one typically only saw a single language, either English or French, on common household items like cereal boxes, milk cartons, and street signs. This visual simplicity reflected a country whose two founding language groups often existed in separate cultural spheres. For a child, the experience was one of a visually consistent but geographically segmented linguistic reality. The packaging served its commercial purpose without actively signaling the country's dual identity, reinforcing the pre-bilingual policy norms of localized language use in retail. The late 1960s and early 1970s brought a significant, though gradual, cultural and political shift as the official policy of bilingualism was ushered in. Children witnessed this major change passively but constantly. The visual landscape began to change as French and English were placed side by side on everyday packaging. This daily exposure was a subtle yet powerful reminder of the new national mandate. This embedding of the two official languages directly into the consumer and public landscape normalized the policy. It made the reality of a country committed to two founding languages a foundational, practical, and enduring part of the Canadian childhood experience, marking a clear break from the unilingual past. The small rituals of 1960s Canada, the heft of a catalogue, the effort required to tune a tube TV, and crinkly Canadian Tire money captured a simpler, more connected era. These 15 vanished memories bridged the old Commonwealth past and the independent nation we became, keeping the nostalgic echo of that distinct northern charm alive. Ready for your next dose of Canadian Tire money nostalgia? Subscribe now.